Hello friends and welcome back for another episode of Indie Impressions. My name is Nick and today we're going to be checking out something called Simon's Lament by developer Wandering Road Games. It's a first-person procedural platformer game where what we're going to be doing is trying our very best to collect all of these little fractal cubes in a time and space before these platforms seem to be able to destroy themselves and fall into the ether below us. So after every 3 that we can grab, it looks like a new series of islands and platforms will appear, and I guess our final eventual goal is to, well, make it up to the top of that mountain where there's a giant version of that icon that I seem to be after. So I found that this one had a very interesting art style to it. I liked the music quite a bit, and it was one that I'd wanted to cover for quite a while on the channel. But every time I'd tried to give it a try, the download link on itch.io just seemed not to work for whatever reason. So today, I noticed it worked, and I said, hey, let's do this. So I've been interested in covering this one for a while, and I'm glad to finally get the opportunity. As you can see, I think it's very pretty. I think most of you probably would agree that the art style is quite lovely, and everything that's going on is just very mysterious and interesting. I've been given a lot of latitude as far as gravity goes to try and make this platforming as convenient as possible, but I have to also not get mired up in the ability to jump too high, because occasionally you can clip into some of the edges of these cliff faces and end up falling down, and you don't get a double jump or anything, so if you screw it up, that's just the end of it for you. Look how cool that is. All these varying edges and shading effects going on. Everything is just slightly different altitude, and I don't know, something about this is very cool to look at. But like I said, it is also a little bit, it's a bit of a difficult thing to try and traverse some of these spaces oh no. Just because you only get one chance, and if you screw it up, well, you end up in the abyss and you've got to start over again, like that. It's bound to happen several times in your attempts at this. I haven't actually made it particularly far, although I have only tried this a handful of times now. So you only start out on this same kind of descending set of steps every single time. I've never seen any other structures happen here at the beginning, but when it first causes all those islands to spawn in, I think that's probably the coolest part, when you're like, oh man, this is what's ahead of me. Look how pretty that is. I do kind of wish that there were multiple kind of graphical aesthetics that could go in here, that maybe the islands didn't always look exactly the same, or maybe the colorations might be a little bit different sometimes, or maybe that actually happens as you get further into things. I'm not entirely sure, but I do hope that that is the case. I have also noticed a couple of times, and maybe this is just me because I'm recording in Fraps, but as I go to reveal another set of islands, it seems to me like there's a little bit of a pause, like the frame rate dips a little bit while it's generating the new set of islands, which, as you might have just seen right there actually, can cause your jump to become a little bit broken, and since you only get one chance to navigate this group of land masses, well, you know, that could cause you to fall into the abyss, just not being able to course correct as you're maybe falling or ascending, or just trying to avoid clipping an edge or something like that. So that's a little bit of a problem from a gameplay perspective. Probably want to get that sorted out if that's going to be a thing that is going on in development. I'm not sure if this is in fact a game that has any, or the developers have any interest in continuing pursuing development for this, but if they did, I think there's actually a surprisingly large amount of different directions this could go in that would all be quite entertaining. I would actually advocate, though, if that was to happen, probably tightening up the gravity. Not that I think you couldn't... Oh, wow, okay, I actually was lucky there was a cliff underneath me there, because it did totally cause me to just keep walking. But I would definitely like it if, you know, on top of them dealing with the little bit of a lag that happens when you generate new islands, if the gravity was toned down and the jumps were made a little bit more precise. I think this would actually be a lot more fun as sort of like a parkour-style game with infinite islands that generate off into the distance. And I like the fact that the beacons appear in different places. I like the fact that you don't actually have to touch the item itself to cause it to, you know, be collected. And I think it would actually play to the strengths of the game if you were able to have a few more navigation options, and if you maybe perhaps had to take some slightly more difficult paths to get to some of the items. I could even imagine this sort of taking a slight Metroidvania approach, just in the fact that maybe there could be certain like power-ups that could appear halfway through the thing, that maybe you could get like an extra high jump occasionally that would last for so long, or maybe an item that you could trigger at will, or maybe you could just get permanent double jump, or so on and so forth. And I think something like that would really make it interesting, because all of a sudden, well, you have the obvious course of where the game wants you to go, and then you've also got the opportunity to go off the rails a little bit and try and find your own way, in the hopes that maybe, just maybe, you'll find one of those items that might make everything a little bit more interesting in the future. And maybe, oh no, really? Oh, see, that was such a cheap death right there. But maybe that could kind of integrate into having the player take different courses to achieve the same ends. So depending on what items you get, maybe the procedural generation could kind of account for the fact that you've got this item now and offer other directions to head in that might be equally as interesting. I've just jumped into the ether in the hope that that island would spawn in time for me to land on. That looks like that was not the case, in fact. As far as the ambience, though, I really do like the way that this all comes together. The fact that these artifacts are so mysterious to look at, like, just very pretty, actually. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Fez. I forgot if I said that already. But it's just very cool to look at. The music seems appropriate for the situation. Seems maybe a little bit too serious if I was to really judge, but at the same time, it's fine. I could also see the music making a very big impact on the kind of perception that you take from something like this, because honestly, you're given very little to grab onto, you know, as a player, as far as the ambience goes. The islands and the landscape that you're walking across are surprisingly nondescript in that there's just kind of vague, ethereal, mysterious stuff happening, but there's not, like, really a direct theme beyond that. And I guess if there were a few more bits of character to kind of put you in place as a player, that might be interesting. You know, various types of structures that might suggest whether or not this position that we find ourselves in is rather malevolent, or if this just, you know, situation of happenstance, or why we're even doing this. I don't know, it doesn't always need to be spelled out, but in this case I feel like it could go to giving the game a little bit more character. But I would also caution against going too far to explain things, because, you know, occasionally having too much story ends up being a little bit superfluous and taking away from the core gameplay, which is actually very fun, just as it is right now. But again, I do think that it could be tightened up and made even a little bit more interesting, even though it's fun as it is here. But, you know, isn't that kind of the enjoyment that I derive from covering these types of games anyway? We can always postulate and make wild, you know, judgments about what may or may not be fun, and then, you know, it's up to the whole community to decide, is this something that you think you might gain or derive inspiration from? Is this something that you could use in your own game development, or something that you just find interesting in one way or another? I just love having that discussion, and whether it's for the benefit of the viewers as viewers, or whether it's to the benefit of the viewers as developers, I think there's something there for pretty much everybody, I hope. Or at least that's kind of the thing that I've kind of tried to position this series as to be. And you guys can, you know, have your own debate about whether or not I was successful in that. It's just as much for the developers as it is for the gamers, as it were. So I've missed one of the beacons back there, and I think these land masses are about to despawn. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to reach it in time, but let's give it a shot. See, this is another one of those situations where maybe like a consumable item might be able to be deployed on one landmass, and if it's like a particularly inconvenient spot for you to get to, maybe you could end up using that to hold it in place for extra long. Or, you know, maybe you could actually play a type of this that's kind of more, oh geez, I thought I could still get a bounce off there in midair or something, but nope. But yeah, I could see a version of this that you could play that's more just about tranquility and just enjoying the environment, and that maybe the landmasses never despawn behind you. I could imagine, for the sake of poly count, that might be a little bit nerve-wracking, but I would also be interested in seeing maybe how you could design around that. I guess just view distance fog would come into play at that point, and, you know, it certainly wouldn't be surprising to see view distance fog in a game that already has fog in every direction, really, even though it's just below us for now. Maybe you could rise up a little bit to cover up areas that are just a little too high in poly count. But, you know, these are the kind of challenges that I think developers strive to solve in general. Where are we looking for beacons? I don't see any more. Oh, back there. I've passed them. The game is generally pretty good about not doing that. I haven't found too many instances where I've actually, like, just moved past things before I noticed that they were there. Oh, no! Oh, how did I actually... I don't know how I lived there. I think I actually just wall jumped by accident. I don't think where I... No, we're dead. I fall. Okay, let's fall. Alright, that's actually going to be about it for Simon's Lament. I think we've covered every piece of ground that I think is worth covering here for this one. Very cool experience. I really enjoyed it a lot, and I would absolutely love to see more exactly in this same sort of facet as far as design goes, and just have this pushed further in any direction that the developers could see. I just keep doing that same mistake there. But I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, if you'd like to go give this a try, there is actually a Windows, Mac, and Linux version of this. It's like a 25-ish meg file, so, you know, not particularly large to download. It's a Unity game, so you can do all the preload or launch stuff if you need to, you know, set the scaling, set all the graphic settings and everything, and, you know, give it a try. Let me know what you think in the comments. Be sure to address any of the design comments that you think might be worth addressing in the comments too, because I'd love to have that discussion as well. And of course, be sure to come back again tomorrow, because new episodes of Indie Impressions go up every single day. So if you're into the idea of having discussions about these sort of things and finding about new sorts of different artistic, original, and unique indie games, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And also, if you haven't, also consider leaving a like on the video, because I do appreciate that as well. But thank you, everybody, for watching. As always, I will see you all tomorrow, and I hope you have a fantastic night. Take care, everybody.